Hey, I'm Adam Jusko from ProudMoney.com. Can credit card companies see exactly what you purchase with their credit cards? That's what we're going to answer. But first, I'm going to ask you to please subscribe to this YouTube channel if you have not already. And if you have already, I thank you for doing so. So it's obvious that credit card companies can see where you made purchases and they know how much you spent at any particular place where you used their cards. But do they know exactly what you bought? Like if you go to the grocery store, do they know if you spent that money on 2 cases of beer versus buying eggs and cereal and produce? Or if you are someone who's maybe trying to meet a spend on a card in order to get a sign-up bonus or to max out a category on a card like the Chase Freedom card, can they know if you went in and spent all that money on gift cards even if you weren't supposed to? Do they have some way to track this? And the answer as to whether the credit card companies can see those specific purchases is it depends. And the reason is because they get their information from each individual merchant, and each individual merchant may send a different level of information back to the credit card companies. Now, for many consumer credit cards and even small business credit cards, the merchants that you're dealing with, they are only going to send back a minimal amount of information. However, if you are dealing with larger companies, and in particular merchants that also process corporate and government credit cards, they may send back more information, which does allow the credit card companies to see many more specifics. In fact, a line-by-line item list of what you have purchased. So when a merchant sets up their credit card processing, they choose to send a certain amount of data back to the credit card companies. There's level 1 data, there's level 2 data, there is level 3 data. Now for many consumer-facing businesses, you know, your local pizza place, your florist, whoever it might be, that mostly is just dealing with local consumers or whatever, they're probably going to be level 1, and they are going to send back just very much bare bones data. They're going to send their merchant name, how much the purchase was, the date of the purchase, what the billing zip code was of the card holder, and that is it. But some merchants are going to choose to send level 2 or level 3 information back to the credit card companies. And those are usually merchants that either deal only with businesses and governments, or maybe deal with consumers, but also have a significant amount of customers that are big business or government as well. So office supply stores many times will be a good example. So Staples is known to be one that sends level 3 information back to the credit card companies. They may sell to you in their stores, but they also have a big corporate clientele as well. So they are sending that level 3 data back. So the ones that have, you know, both consumers and business and maybe government clients, they're more likely to send level 3. Also, if you just have bigger companies that are more established, they may be more likely to send level 3 information as well. And you might say, well, why doesn't everybody just send level 3 information if they can all choose? And the reason is because it is a little more complicated to send that level 2 and level 3 information than it is to simply send level 1. And not all businesses even necessarily have the option for level 2 or level 3 if they aren't a business that is going to do a decent amount of volume. So that is where some of that comes in. And there's processing equipment, there are other things as well. So it's usually bigger businesses, and businesses in particular that have business and government clientele in addition to consumers, or maybe just business and government. And I know this is kind of boring, but just real quick, the reason that some of those merchants will send that level 3 information, that very specific, here's exactly what was bought, here's how many were purchased, all that kind of stuff, versus just sending the easy level 1 information, is because the credit card companies will give them a discount on the merchant fees they have to pay on every credit card transaction. So those interchange fees that are part of every single credit card transaction, they can pay less. When they send more information, the credit card companies then can combat fraud easier because they have so much more information about the transactions, and then they can give a cut on those fees to those merchants that sent that information because there's less fraud on their transactions. So bottom line, in most cases, the credit card companies aren't seeing the specific things that you are buying as a consumer, although in some cases with some merchants they are able to see those specific items that you have bought. Now, one of the reasons that this question sometimes comes up is because people want to know if the credit card companies can track their gift card purchases. And this often comes into play when someone gets a new credit card and they are trying to meet a spend for a sign-up bonus, or they are trying to max out the rewards on a certain credit card that is giving a higher multiple, like a 5% cash back or something like that. They'll go and they'll buy a bunch of gift cards to try to satisfy whatever the requirement is, even if the credit card company says gift cards do not qualify. And so they wonder, well, how do they know if I'm buying gift cards or not? So in some cases, like talking about Staples or other stores that may give those individual purchases, well then obviously they could see them. But in other cases, they would not necessarily see them because they're not getting that individual information. But that doesn't necessarily mean that they can't track you a different way. Credit card companies have a lot of systems set up to mine the data that they have, and when they see a credit card holder doing something that is out of the norm, either for that credit card holder or out of the norm for card holders in general, that's when a red flag is raised, and that's when maybe things are elevated up a level to take a closer look. This is how the credit card companies sometimes will shut off your credit card if it is suddenly used in a strange location. They don't expect you to do that. Same thing if you suddenly make a huge purchase at a place that you don't normally make a big purchase. They may want to take a closer look at it. So that is one thing that might raise a red flag. They might also see a purchase that looks like it could be gift card purchases if you spent a ton at a certain store and it's a very round number, like if you spent $1,000 exactly somewhere versus $1,000.38. That might indicate that you are making purchases of gift cards versus something else. They might also have the merchant send something back to them if the merchant feels like there is something going on that they are not quite sure about. And finally, they could just go back to the merchant and say, hey, we are looking at this particular transaction. What was purchased? Because even though the merchant hasn't sent necessarily that level 3 data to the credit card companies previously, if they have the receipts that were originally generated for that particular transaction, they could still send them along to the credit card company on that individual basis. So you think about how there are chargebacks on credit cards. So if somebody makes a purchase and they say I didn't get the thing or it was broken or whatever, and they want to file a dispute, well then the credit card company goes back to the merchant and they want to see that individual transaction, and the merchant needs to have that receipt to show that it was purchased or whatever. So the more detail they have, obviously the better they can fight that chargeback, and then that also comes into play in terms of the credit card company being able to look back at what you purchased. So if they want to know if you bought a bunch of gift cards, they still could go back to the merchant and say, hey, can you look up this particular transaction and tell us what was purchased? So you're not necessarily going to fool the credit card companies just because they aren't getting that level 3 data. So it's all kind of complicated, but I guess the bottom line is really that anytime you make a purchase with your credit card, there is a paper trail. So even if the merchant isn't sending back that level 3 data that shows all the specific things you bought, the credit card company can still go back and get it if they want to. The good news for you is you're not really all that interesting. So for the most part, they're not going to do that unless you are doing something that they don't want you to be doing and they decide to go a little more specific on you and find out what is happening. They have the ability to do that if you trip one of their wires there and the red flag goes up. So for most people, it doesn't come into play. If you're trying to be a little clever and get around maybe some requirements that the credit card companies have for a bonus or for a special rewards category, that's when you could get caught. So that's it for this video. If you have any questions, put them in the comments section below. Otherwise, I thank you for watching, and as always, please go to proudmoney.com where we do credit card reviews, we talk personal finance, we talk deals, and all sorts of other fun stuff too. Thanks for watching. Bye.